Here. Hello everybody, and welcome to our first hybrid event here at Phoenixville Public Library. Hello to those of you in the room here, in our community room in the library, and those of you on Zoom right now. Welcome to this presentation in the Community Gardening Around the Village series, a series that the library has been doing for almost 2 years now, with a number of partner organizations in the community, which I'd like to acknowledge at this time. Phoenixville Communities That Care, the Phoenixville Recreation Department, Phoenixville Area Transition Living Landscape, Penn State Extension, Camp Hill Kemperton Hills, Phoenixville Hospital, Trellis for Tomorrow, and the Chester County Food Bank. Tonight we are pleased to welcome back to Phoenixville Public Library after about 6 years or so, Master Gardener and Permaculture designer Tony Buck, also known as the Ecological Gardener, and tonight he's going to share his recipes for food preservation. Welcome, Tony.
Okay, thank you very much. Yes, I'm Tony Buck. I hope everyone can hear okay, online as well. So I call it easy to do veg, fruit and preserving. As you know, you can spend a lot of trouble and time preserving using hot equipment, canning, and so on, and sterilizing. I don't do that. I can't be bothered to do that. If I had a family, I probably would do it, because then I'd have a lot more food. So these are very simple methods that I use. I use them over and over. I mean, when does the harvest start? It actually starts in April. I'm picking oregano in April, because that's the first harvest. And probably I'm harvesting it 3 times a year, easy. And then lemon balm's up next, so these are herbs. So I'm a big herbal guy. So I'm talking about, first of all, what I call the dry herbs. Because, let's see, there we go. These are the dry herbs. There's dry plants and there's wet plants, okay? I'm talking about the dry plants to begin with. These are my typical plants, the lovely herbs that we have, and here they are. There's apple mint, and this is typically what I would harvest. I might have more. There's lavender, which is great for cakes, but also I use my herbs for 2 things: culinary, cooking, and drinking. And I probably drink more than I eat. So I'm always making herbal tea from these lovely herbs that grow very naturally. This is my back garden. And lemon verbena is a special one. You have to keep that plant indoors over the winter to get a big harvest, because you want to get the plant really big. But there's lemon balm, which is almost like a weed for a lot of people. It's no weed. It's a fantastic. I mean, you get, when you drink this, you become, you get more and more respect for it. This is cured shingles, right? I gave this to a friend who had shingles of the tongue. He was bent double, and he got off of the stuff they were giving him, the pharmaceutical stuff. He got off of it, and he started drinking lemon balm. By 10 o'clock that morning, he was pain-free. There's something about this. In Europe, they use this in a salve. They use lemon balm in a salve. Now, you might think, well, this doesn't look like very much, but do you know how many cups of tea that is? There's a lot. And look at this this is my only harvest this year, is thyme. But all I need is a pinch of that. I don't know if those of you who've used it. It's so strong in taste and smell that there's probably 100 cups of thyme tea there. So even just harvesting a few twigs. Now what I do is I cut all of those. I think I cut this one. It was probably taller. I cut the twigs right off, And some herbs I shred. I take the leaves off first, like lemon balm. But some things like rosemary, I might put in this great big. This is my herb frame. Very simple, very easy to make. Anyone can make one of these. You don't have to be a great carpenter. It's just a 1x2 frame, and it's got door screening or window screening on it. And I put these little things. So there it is. See? It's just a frame with some screening on. And I made it very well because I was going to put it outside. I made it fit really well. I didn't want the ants getting in. But I never put it outside. I leave it in the bedroom or the living room. I just sprinkle all the stuff in there. I just close it like that, and it keeps the dust off, and I leave it in the living room, 4 or 5 days later, things are dry. So these are the drying herbs. You could dry them in different ways. These are dry plants. Here's something. Those of you who sew, like I do, I got a sewing machine. See that? That's a net bag. I bought some netting from one of the stores. There's another bag, just sewed up to make 3 bags. I hang them on the line. I don't like hanging herbs together in a clump. That's the old way, and it works, but I like it to be sort of more open. It dries quicker. This is a very simple way. So if you've got a sewing machine, you can make those. This is a little bit more difficult to make. But guess what? This is your herb dryer for the dry herbs, right? Let's see. I've got a picture of this, I think, somewhere. So that's lavender picked. That's sort of how I pick it, just to give you a size idea. And that's a good harvest, that is. So here we are. There's my bags hanging up on the line. There's some bags. So there's some open, the old-fashioned on the left side. And here's that paper bag. The paper bag costs virtually nothing, like maybe a cent if you were to buy it. The BMW is $35,000. So that's a $35,000 herb dryer there. But if you've got a back window, a car with a back window, this is unbelievable. You put all your dry herbs, what I call the dry plants, in there, just close it up, and about 3 days later, you open it up, dry as anything. It costs you nothing, right? You could actually sit that in a window if the sun was there, or you could put it in a plastic container. You could put it in a plastic tote in the garden with the sun beating on it, and it would dry. But that, I forget the lady who told me how that. But this is really an incredible way to dry herbs.
I have to attest, Tony, when you told me about it, it works. I use it all the time.
Do you?
It works amazingly well.
Yeah, ask questions if you want as we go along. Don't wait till the end.
I just lay a sheet in the back of my car and spread out herbs and open the windows just a crack, and it heats up like,
Yeah, but it could blow away, right?
the car's shut. I mean,
Oh.
when it's sitting at home.
Yeah, okay. So these are the dry plants. They dry in 3 or 4 days, and they dry easily and well. And let's see what I got here. And by the way, let me see if I got that quote. So there's sort of, sometimes I use the pestle and mortar because I will grind up the, you can put it in a coffee grinder, you can put your herbs in a coffee grinder if you want powder for some reason. And, as a tea, you can just steep it for 3 minutes or 4 minutes. If you want to go pharmacological, meaning you're going to use herbs for medicine, you might want to powder them, but you also might want to simmer them for 5 to 10 minutes because you want to get all the goodness out of the herb if you're going to use it medicinally.
5 to 10 what?
Minutes.
Oh,
Minutes. So that's called infusing. You want to infuse the herb into the water. You want to get the best out of it you can. You will still get goodness out of it making tea, but to make medicine, you definitely want to spend longer.
What are your favorite combinations, just from a taste standpoint?
From a taste standpoint, I love lemon balm. I really love oregano. I like the tea. It's supposed to be antiviral. Throughout the pandemic, I was drinking before I went for vaccinations, I was drinking oregano tea, and I didn't have any reaction to the
Just
tea.
straight lemon balm tea or straight?
No, oregano tea in the cup, oregano, hot water on top.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like
Do you
that.
combine them, do you have combos that you like?
You could. I don't combine. I'm funny that way. Apple mint's a real favourite of mine, more than spearmint. Apple mint's there. Lavender is very nice at night, very calming. Let's see what else we got there. Lemon balm.
Purslane.
Purslane I don't use as tea.
Oh.
That's just there to be. I use that. You know what I do with purslane? Well, purslane's a wet herb. You can't dry it in a bag like this. So I'm going to show you the dehydration. I use the purslane in the dehydrator, and I use that for food. Now you can eat purslane. We'll do purslane. I've got pictures coming up. But yeah, so I'm very fond of all the ones you see. What else do I do? Lemon verbena is a real favorite of mine. But I grow it, but I don't always get enough of it. So let me see back there. There's lemon verbena. Unless you grow that plant for 3 years, you won't have enough yield to use. But there's a place called King's Herb Nook, which is on 10, just south of Honeybrook, and they have all the herbs you could ever want, and they know what to do with them too. You know, those ladies at King's Herb Nook are really good. But they got stuff that I can't even grow. So here's a quote from what we call the Blue Zones Kitchen, if you've heard of that. This guy went around the world and he found 6 places in the world where people live to 100 years old. This is all scientific, it's not everywhere. Well, everywhere people live to 100, but the most concentration of 100-year-olds are these 6 blue zones that this guy talks about. And something that they all do is they drink herbal teas. Look, there it is. They drink wild rosemary, sage, oregano, whatever. And there's some information there about what he says researchers have found that herbal teas do. The secret they do is, this is it, they drink these teas daily, but they rotate the flavors. See, you can get stuck, oh, lemon verbena is my favorite, but you can get stuck on that every day, but don't, drink a different one every day, because you're getting different chemicals and phytochemicals and those micronutrients in the different ones. You're doing yourself a health favor by drinking different ones. This is a lovely book for cooking. And of course, all the people who live to 100 do gardening. They all drink herbal teas. Most of them live on islands like Icarus, which is an island in Greece, or Sardinia is also a place. Or there's a peninsula in Costa Rica, that's one of the places. They all seem to be living on a slope, so they're walking up and down a hill all day. They do a lot of walking. But yeah, the blue zones, there are our elders, and they're showing us how to do it with the herbal teas. So this is my south-facing porch in Coatesville. I glassed it in, because I'm a handyman, I can do that. I glassed it in, and this is probably January about 4 years ago. This is the middle of winter. Well, there is some heat because of the houses right there, but no real extra heat. No extra light. South-facing. I bring in certain things like, there's the lemon verbena. It has to come in for the winter. Here's some parsley growing, Swiss chard. I'm growing all sorts of things. The rosemary I bring in, sometimes it'll go through the winter, sometimes it won't. So there's some sage, that goes through the winter. But look, south-facing porch. If you've got a south-facing window, you can be growing your herbs all through the winter. There's no reason to stop growing. That's better than preserving. It's right there for you, all right? So, as I say, that's my porch, and there's all sorts of things. And we'll do a bit more of that later on. I've got a few more pictures to show you, because I do grow through the winter. So there's the wet stuff, which is tomatoes, and they're very wet. And you need to use a dehydrator with the tomatoes. And here's my dehydrator. I don't advise getting a big one. You can get 15 shells. This one, it has 4 shells. Here they are. 4 little shells. You see? And why 4 shells? Well, it takes me 20 minutes. It takes me 20 minutes to load this with tomatoes. So I cut them. I use a little steak knife to cut them, if he's got one somewhere. Back to 230s. So I use a little serrated steak knife rather than a nice sharp Japanese $1,000 knife. You cut your finger off with those. This is not that sharp, but it does the job. And I cut them into 3. I cut these little tomatoes into 3. And I load up the dehydrator. It takes me 5 minutes per tray. So if you get a 16 tray, you'll never do it, right? But for 4 trays, that's 20 minutes, and then switch it off. It's got a heat dial there, and it tells you for each thing what it takes, and it takes 36 hours with this on. There's a little heat coil in the back with a fan. It takes 36 hours to dry tomatoes. You say, well, people sun-dry tomatoes. Yeah, in the Middle East, where there's no humidity, and they've got a nice roof, right, with some linen cloth. We've got the very time you want to dehydrate tomatoes in Philadelphia area, it's so humid, right? And if you leave them in that bag or in this netting, they will get mold on them on the second day. and you don't want more. So we do 36 hours in the dehydrator. I don't even see that tick up on my electric bill. It's very low energy, this thing, very low. So, and sometimes it's a bit longer than 36 hours. So, with the bigger tomatoes, which I do also do, I usually empty out all the seeds in the middle. They sort of fall out anyway. And I'm mainly doing the skins and the flesh of the tomato when I do big tomatoes. With the as you can see, with the cherry tomatoes, I dry the whole thing. And here's a little trick. This one on the side is powdered tomato. So I'll take the dried tomatoes and I'll put them in my coffee grinder and I'll grind them up and make, this is a nice trick for somebody who's got difficult children who don't want to eat good things, right? Grind up into a powder and just drop them in the soup or drop them in the salad so they can't see them, see? That's a way of getting food into kids who don't want it. What I do with that, I'm not fond of tomatoes, I'll be honest with you, but I do make a big bag of them every year. And what I do is I grind them like that, and I always bake, every 2 weeks I bake bread. I bake 3 loaves of bread. And I put 1 tablespoonful in each loaf of bread of this powdered tomato. Because I just want to get it into my body, you know, I want that. And it doesn't change the taste of the bread. I love bread as it is. I don't need to make a tomato tasting bread. So I just put a tablespoonful, and I use powdered tomato all the time. If somebody's got like an autistic child or something, you could powder almost any food if you could dry it. And you can sneak it into the food and they won't know it's there. And they need that nutrition. This could even be a business for somebody. You know, I'm giving you $1 million idea here. Yeah. I probably won't do it. I'm 72. I probably won't do my $1 million idea. I have lots of those. But yeah, powdering dried stuff.
So you dry those till they're like crispy?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah.
I dry them till they're dry, crispy. And you know what I do? I put them in a bag just like this. And I leave the bag open in the fridge. Because your fridge is very dehydrated. It's always drying out. It's like an air conditioner. It's always drying the air out inside. So even if they're a little bit soft, I put them in the bag, leave it open, a couple of days, they're as dry as a bone. And then I seal it up. So once it's in the fridge, leave the bag open, it'll keep drying. Keep drying. So that's the wet stuff. The other wet stuff is purslane. There it is. And I always love to introduce this particular vegetable because most people think that's a weed. It's growing on the sidewalks of Pennsylvania. People are pulling it out, throwing it away. This is one of the most nutritious vegetables in America, right, in the world. This has more omega-3 fatty acid than virtually any plant, right? I'm a vegetarian, so I need some of that for my heart. I don't get it from fish. So this is growing everywhere. It's free. I propagate it in my garden. I spread it all around. I encourage it. And it's a great ground cover. If you're not growing on that piece of ground, nature hates bare ground. So let the purslane go. See? So I can just go out in the garden and grab some of that and start eating it. You know, if it's clean. I bring it in. I eat it raw in the morning in a smoothie, in a protein smoothie. I put it in and I'll whiz that up with a couple of with my protein powder and some kale leaves. But that purslane is really good stuff. I also dehydrate it in here because it's wet. It's like a succulent, if you know it. So it needs, again, to go 36 hours in here. Maybe not so much as that. Tomatoes are wetter. But it definitely needs to go through the dehydration machine.
Or raw in salad?
Raw in salad, yeah, absolutely. You can store it in the fridge for over a week. And you can eat the seeds, the stalks, every part of that plant. Now
Can you eat too much of it?
I don't think so. I don't think so. I don't think you will anyway. But there is a similar one. Some people say there's no lookalikes. There is a tiny leaf. We were talking about it earlier, and I don't know the name of it. But it's like a tiny leaf that's very on the ground, very, very laid down, and the leaf has a little dark spot in the middle. It's similar to that, but actually it's nothing like it, really. It's such a tiny leaf, but it could be mistaken. So make sure this is purslane. It's Portulaca oleracea is the Latin, if you're not sure. Yeah, eat it raw. It's been seen on Egyptian stelae from 3,000 years ago. The Egyptians were eating. I put it online. I have a Tony Fix It at YouTube, and I show you how to harvest it on there. And I've got Turkish ladies on there going, oh, you should mix that with so and so, and they give me recipes. And I said, well, if you ever come over, you know, pop in and we'll do the recipe. So people are eating this all over the world. Our friend here, she's from California. She said it was all over California. So
I just didn't know, so I.
yeah. So firstly, was shown to me by a wise man 50 years ago that we should eat that. And like I said, so eat the weeds. But that is a wet one. That is a wet one. So it needs to go in here. And so that's it for dehydrating, really, that I want to say. If you have any questions, ask me about that.
I do.
Yeah? Yeah.
Do you ever put any flavorings on the tomatoes before you dry them?
No.
Oh.
No, I don't.
I mean, is that
What would you do?
recommended? I don't know. I keep thinking of sun-dried tomatoes, and they're so delicious and salty, and
There's
no.
nothing. There's nothing on them. Maybe they sprinkle salt. There's nothing. No, they don't do anything. No, actually, dried tomatoes are like incredible to me. I mean, I prefer them to raw. You know, they're very sweet. They're like candy.
Yeah.
They're like candy. Eat the ones you make yourself. Now listen, here's another thing. I'm growing all my own stuff. You don't have to. You can go out and buy tomatoes and bring them into your dehydrator. You can go and buy peaches. You know, there's peaches. I've dried peaches in this thing because they're wet. You can buy fruit and dehydrate stuff in here. You don't have to be growing it. So you can sometimes buy purslane at Kimberton Whole Foods. I think I've seen it for sale. But if you know somebody with it, that's it. So don't think you have to grow stuff to preserve stuff. If you like a particular vegetable, or if you go to King's Herb Nook and get lots of herbs like this, rosemary, especially lavender. You can bake with lavender, make great cookies. So, you know, so don't think you have to be a grower to be a preserver. You can buy stuff in season, bring it home, dehydrate it, preserve it, whatever, and you will have it there. It'll be good. Now, why preserve things? Why even bother? Well, of course, it's always there, ready for you. You don't have to go to the store. You will use it if it's there. And you need all the nutrition you can get, right? Because a lot of people today are eating corporate manufactured food, and they're committing suicide on the installment plan by using that food, because there's no nutrition inside.
Like, how long does the nutrient value last, you know, roughly in a?
Well, I think it's pretty good with dehydrated stuff, and with most preserving things, I think it is good. Now, a vegetable will start to lose its energy and its nutrients from the moment it's picked until, you know, listen, the average apple you buy in the supermarket is 5 months old before you eat it. There's a lot of nutrients have gone out of that apple. 5 months old. They put them in fridges with carbon dioxide.
The farmer's market, the Phoenixville Farmer's Market, one of the people that are there, they have apples, an orchard, and they dry their own apples and they don't add anything to it, and they're really, really fresh.
Nice.
And they have like 15 different varieties of apples, and it's so, so, so good.
Now, who's that again?
It's one of the.
Farmers
Oh,
market.
It's the Phoenixville Farmer's Market.
Okay, at the Phoenixville Farmers Market, you can get dried apples from local orchards. Can't beat that. That's great.
Really fresh,
So the whole point is to you know, to have that.
Can you store those in, other than the plastic, just in glass jars with a lid?
There's some cucumbers I did a year ago. Okay? That's a year ago. I'm going to show you how to do that. That's as far as I go with jarring stuff. These are cucumbers from
But like with the herbs, you just always keep them in the plastic bag, so can you put them in jars or?
Oh yeah, of course you can. I actually got them in jars and stuff, but I just threw some like to make it easy to bring it. Yeah. So
When you store the herbs in the jar, do you put them on a shelf or do you put them in what temperature?
they're in a cupboard in the kitchen,
Okay.
above my stove. They shouldn't be, but they
Oh.
are.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Just in a cupboard, just in a cupboard.
Yeah.
And you have them ready to go, you know, don't make it, every time you push something too far away, you don't use it. We always say in permaculture, make sure the herb garden is right outside outside the kitchen. If you can't get to it in your pajamas, you won't use it, right? So your vegetable garden should be zone 1, right outside the kitchen. Anything you need, you'll go down in your pajamas, you'll grab it and come back up. But I've got to get rid of this guy. Somebody in Ohio wants my advice. How do they know? So anyway, this is cucumbers, and this is my very simplest method of doing it. This is vinegar, 5% apple vinegar. Clean the jar as well as you can, let it dry. That's my thing, right? It's just a jar I've used before. What was in this? Probably, if I know me, that was beetroots or something, beets. Oh, red raspberry, red raspberry stuff. So anyway, that's vinegar. Look, there's some cabbage. There's some little cabbages I grew. I picked these in June. It's now mid-September. I had them in the, so that's preserving. They were in the dryer drawer at the bottom of the fridge, in that bag, since June, right? So here's my handy dandy knife. Cut them there. Turn them over. And I just shred it. Just shred that cabbage. Now this is a great thing. This is cruciferous, right? Because it's cabbage. That means it's anti-cancer. That means it's from the brassica family. There's no lettuce in the world can touch this, right? I don't eat lettuce personally. It's just not enough nutrients for me, I don't think. So, look, the great thing about this is you put this in here. It's wet. It's a little bit wet. Pop it in and fill it right up. Now you're going to have cruciferous vegetable right there in the fridge, ready to eat at a heartbeat. You don't have to go to the store. You don't even have to cook it, right? It's right there in the jar, ready to go. And you're doing yourself the biggest favor in the world because the chemicals in there can hold back stroke. This is from the National Cancer Institute. Cancer, stroke, and diabetes. This is a preventative food. You know, I won't go any more. So there's that. You just saw what that did. You can top it up with water. Here's some water that Mark's brought in. And let's see. Ooh, I had another little bag of stuff. Yeah, I like to put a flat, level tablespoonful of salt in that little jar. Okay, level tablespoonful of salt with 5% vinegar. And in this one, here's the salt. I put it down, sort of loading it up so I can do it. This one, I've got some mint, dried mint, which I'm putting in with it, right? And then I'm going to top that up with water. Ooh. All the way to the top, as far as I can go. Ooh. Get that top on.
How many ounces of vinegar do you think we used?
For that, 8 ounces, maybe half the jar. So half, whatever jar you have half the jar. If you want, you can use all vinegar. It won't make any difference. We're just being cheap by putting half water and half vinegar. We're saving money. In England, where I grew up, we made pickled onions, small onions. After the end of the harvest, you had all these small onions that didn't fully develop. You cut them up. You don't cut them up. You take the skins off. You put them in the jar with 5% vinegar, the whole thing. That's called pickled onions. You put a sock in, and when the sock rots, you know they're ready. no, that's not true. But the longer you leave it, the better it tastes. This starts tasting good within a week, right? It's right there in the fridge. You come home tired from work, and you just got something on the plate, like maybe some meat, fish, or something. You can put some cabbage right next to it, and it tastes better than when you just boil it, because it's got that maybe a few herbs infused in there, the vinegar and the salt. It really tastes good. So that's a way of giving yourself a
Is
nice...
that called infusing? Is that what you're saying?
This is, well, no, this is, it's not, this is pickling. I would call this
Pickling,
pickling,
okay.
yeah. And it's called refrigerator pickling.
Okay.
Now, I don't keep that outside. A couple of days it can stay outside to stay a little bit warm, so it's doing some work, but then it's got to go in the fridge. This one's been in the fridge for a year, right? Way at the back. And it's my last one from last year's crop, I should eat them. As you can see, that's perfect, there's no mold, there's nothing wrong with
And you're
that.
saying that's the same thing with an apple?
That's half vinegar, half water with a bit of salt. Yeah, that's all it is, no fuss, no boiling.
Do you always use apple vinegar?
I like apple vinegar.
But either one would work.
Some people use white vinegar and it's fine. Yeah, it's fine, but about 5%, which is what most vinegars are.
How did you grow your cabbage without them being eaten alive? Mine are like Swiss cheese.
I pick them small.
Yeah.
You see how small they are?
Yeah.
If I let them go any bigger, like you say, they'll get you. Everybody will eat them. Everybody wants to eat them.
Yeah.
They know how good it is. The children don't want to eat them, but you know, somebody
The
once said,
insects do.
"What's happiness to the tongue is an enemy to the stomach." So you eat sugar because you like it, but it doesn't do you any good. It's things that don't taste perhaps so sugary or sweet are better for you. Yeah, it's very hard to get a cabbage that's not shredded. As I said, I planted those in March, and I harvested them in June. So that's already 3 months old. So in the fridge things will keep pretty well, you know. So that's that. That's a great way of having really good food, tasty food, ready to go. And
Again, once they're pickled, they should be in the fridge.
once you've done that, that should be stored in the fridge. Because I didn't sterilize, you know, and I didn't do this and I didn't do that. If you used 100% vinegar, the pickled onions used to sit on the shelf all year. You take 3 or 4, but once you know. So here's another thing.
How about zucchini? Can you pickle the zucchini the same way?
I've never done it, but I believe you could. Look at these. I cheat with these. I buy peaches from an Amish store near me, right? I buy peaches. These are you can do this yourself if you have time. These are peaches, water, and sugar. So it's a 50% sugar and 50% water mix. It's a very high sugar. And then you have to peel the peaches. You know, only if you have an orchard is this worth it. I buy this because I can't be bothered. But the thing I do with that is when I get them, once you open these, they have to go in the fridge. You can keep that on the shelf for a year like that.
Those are canned, right? They're not just.
Well, they have the skins taken off. Some local person has done that and then put them in sugar water.
But not canned?
I don't
Like
know.
what?
You don't have to. When you say can, you're
I mean, the water, at
you're
least the
saying
water bath.
heating and all the rest of it. Yeah. No, you don't have to do that. Maybe they did do that because it's commercial, but you can do that just with sugar water. But it won't. Yeah, again, if you keep them in the fridge, once you've opened them, even these, once you've opened them, you've got to put them in the fridge. So I don't want to do all that. So I get those home, and I take 2 of them and put them in a little plastic bag like that. And these are frozen, and I freeze them in my freezer. I got probably 10 of these in my freezer right now. This is a fantastic dessert. I come home, you just take that out, tip it up, I put it in the microwave for 15 seconds just to soften it a little. Boy, that is a nice dessert, frozen peaches. And I started with
From the jar.
I started with that, yeah, from the jar. I bought them in the jar, there's probably 15 in there or something. So you can get 6 or 7 lovely dessert meals from that jar, frozen. They'll keep for a year now, and they're not clogging up the fridge. So that's what I do. You can buy beets like that, of course, you know, and I don't bother to do beets. I don't grow them, and I don't spend hours cooking them. I go to the Amish and I buy them. They've already done that with them, and I like that. But yeah, this is it. I do this with pears too. I buy jarred pears just like that. Two halves of a pear in that plastic bag, put it in the freezer. Oh boy, when you open that up and you just give it 15 seconds in the micro just to break the ice up a bit. It's lovely. What's even lovelier is this. This is called infused vinegar. Okay, so this is just vinegar. I didn't fill the whole thing up because there's a reason. This is, I grow, I wonder if that's next. Well, I never know what's next. Oh, well, I'm just showing you cabbage there in a jar, cucumbers too. But no, we don't need to go there. So this is it. You can infuse vinegars. If you're like really addicted to oregano or something, right? You could put a load of dried oregano in there. You could put dried or ordinary. Some of the dried herbs, they work better in vinegar. And you can leave that in there for 3 or 4 weeks, right? Or even 2 months, if you want. You're infusing the vinegar. What you're trying to do, what I'm doing there is, I'm infusing, I grow ginger in the garden. And I cut it up, and that's ginger in there. Right, that's just ginger. So I'm infusing this little bit of vinegar with ginger. In a couple of weeks, I'll put that through a sieve. I'll shake it up like that because I want the powder to be in there. It's kind of a powder. I'll save the ginger. I might freeze it and use it for cooking. But I want the vinegar to be infused with ginger. And if you put a tablespoonful of that on that, oh my God! You must eat more than 2 halves at one time. Okay? Don't be taking out all these 5 and just one of those. Oh my goodness! With pears, it's unbelievable. Pears with infused vinegar with ginger. Oh, it tastes great. Here's another secret. Something's called an oxymel. This is oxymel. I forget what it's Latin for honey and vinegar. So when I've taken that out of there, I've actually been sneaking. As you can see, this was up there. I've been using it already. So I do half of vinegar, oxymel, half vinegar, half honey. So I'll take out the herbs that I've been infusing in the vinegar, and then I'll add 50% honey to that and shake it up. And now you have an oxymel, which is this amazing thing. You can do anything with it. It's like a little sauce especially for desserts. So I put that on the pears or on the peaches. Oh, heaven.
50-50 honey and vinegar?
Yeah, 50-50 honey and vinegar. That's called an oxymel. But you infuse the vinegar first. You know, I used to put all the vinegar and all the honey in together. But I thought, you know, that honey is kind of smothering the herbs. I don't think they're getting out as much as they could if they were just in vinegar. So now I infuse the vinegar and add the honey later.
So you never combine those different herbs?
Now you can. Now that's just one thing. I put oregano in vinegar. So I infuse oregano. So I've got oregano vinegar sitting on my table when I want it. I put lemon verbena in vinegar. I infuse the vinegar with all kinds of herbs. So you can do that too, especially if you have a favorite taste that you like. You can infuse it like that. Right?
How long will they last?
The
Infused vinegar.
I've had one for 4 years.
And that doesn't need refrigeration?
I do refrigerate that. Yes, I do. I don't think it does because it's half vinegar and half honey, which means it's sugar, really. And that's preserving itself. But I do keep it in the fridge. Because it's just that bottle will last me probably 2 years once it's full up. I just finished one in 4 years. I said, bloody hell, 4 years ago. So it lasted 4 years in the fridge.
Are you using dried herbs or fresh herbs?
That's fresh ginger.
Yeah, but if you're using herbs.
Yeah, if
Right.
it hurts you, both.
You don't?
You can use both in this case. Yeah, you can use both. I usually put dried in, but you can use both.
You said it takes a week though, once you,
No, I usually infuse that for a couple of months.
oh, months.
You can do it for 2 weeks if you want,
Oh, okay.
but 2 months, it's got some power, you know. And then you can still use that ginger after. You know, you can freeze it. So ginger is great. You can add sugar to it. You can make ginger is 4 different ways of preserving ginger if you want to. Yeah, bottled bread. Let's see. So that's a proof of last year, and they're still tasting great. Now you can also add herbs to this stuff too. You can add peppercorns. People have peppercorns and all sorts of things. You can add some chili peppers if you're into that. If you like heat, add some chili peppers in there, and that'll give you that. So the infused vinegar, I did that. Jarred fruit, we did that. The oxymel. How are we doing for time? Oh, not bad. So that's 2 methods. There's drying, then there's this vinegar and jars and things like that. And then you can do preserve. You can just preserve it in the basement if you have an unheated basement. This is what we're known for in America. I've been all over the world, and I don't know anybody who's built a root cellar anywhere else in the world except in America, right? So we're known for root cellars. I'm a nutcase. There's 78 of us have read this book in America out of 350 million. It's called Root Cellars in America. Their history designed from 1609 to 1920. I mean, this is the kind of stuff I do. Anyway, this is a root cellar in Coatesville. That's in Coatesville, that's in Phoenixville. So these are root cellars. They were built as root cellars. So before refrigeration, if that baby wasn't full in October, you didn't get through the winter, unless you were buying food from somewhere else.
Are they also called spring houses?
No.
Oh, that's different.
A spring house is different. I'll do that if you like. But this is a root cellar. In other words, it's a cellar built at least 36 inches below ground, because our frost line goes 36 inches. And then it stops. It doesn't get further down. Things don't freeze further down than 36 inches. So this one, that door goes down, and there's 36 inches of soil on top of these root cellars. And as I say, that one's in Coatesville, actually. They'll be full of shells, full of potatoes and cabbages and carrots and apples at the end of the year. And if it wasn't, either you're buying your food from the farmer, or you want that baby stored. This is built in 1850, the one on the left, and probably this one was too. And as you see, there's just the oil tank in there now and some garden stuff. We're not using it. But the reason they were built wasn't to keep the vegetables cold. It was to keep the vegetables warm. Because if you kept the potatoes in the barn in winter and it froze, the potatoes would freeze and be ruined. They don't freeze well, right? The apples, the same thing, cabbages, all of it. Down below, 36 inches below the ground is a miracle. The land is 40 to 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Constantly. Almost everywhere in the world. You can use that. You can use that because cabbages and potatoes and stuff like that, they... Sorry, you didn't read the list. Well, maybe I did. Yeah. But I've got some experts here, they can tell me. So, apples, they like to be kept 32 to 40 degrees. Not below 32, but above 32, 40 degrees. 80 to 90% relative humidity. Cold and moist, in other words. Apples like to be cold and moist. They'll keep for 6 months in there. And they'll keep in your basement.
I think the crawl space kind of mimics.
A crawl space can, but a crawl space isn't below ground, so it can freeze. Unless your house is warming it. So a lot of people can't store stuff in their basement, it's too hot already, right? You've got heating down there. And even if you don't have heating, maybe the heat's radiating from the first floor. So you have to go out into the barn, and in some of these buildings, in the corner of the barn, you'll see another little building. That's the root cellar inside the barn. The barn's too cold, but once you get over to that earth, say the earth is over there, you put your root cellar where the earth's backed up, because it's going to keep it warm. So under 36 inches below us, it's a constant. So even if your heat went out, the reason we put furnaces in the basement is because if the power goes off and everything freezes, the basement won't freeze. The floor of the basement is a constant 45 degrees, forever. So we put the utilities down there, so if something goes wrong and you're away in Bermuda through the winter, it won't freeze down there. The frost can get in, but there's a less chance of it, you see. So that's why we build root cellars, is to keep our food a little warmer than freezing. So that's an interesting thing. Things like cabbages, cold and very moist, 90 to 95. This guy would be like 95 degrees humidity and between 32 and 40. And they'll keep almost all winter in this root cellar or in your basement if you can create that. Even in a basement that's heated, you could create a small room in the corner as a root cellar if you insulated it. And it would just use the wall of the basement to warm inside there. Carrots, cold and very moist. Again, 32 to 40. You can even keep, let's see, pears. You can keep pears from 32 to 40. Potatoes, which is a big favorite, cold and moist. 38 to 40 degrees potatoes like. If you have a basement, if you can keep that temperature, I do. I don't heat my basement, so I can keep the temperature about 45. So it's a little warm for potatoes, and I know that because they start sprouting earlier. But from 38 to 40, at 80–90% humidity, you can keep potatoes for at least 6 months and maybe longer, right? I keep my seed potatoes in the bottom of the fridge, I'll be honest with you, because I grow the same ones every year, so I keep my seed potatoes there. So this is a real blessing. What was the other one? The spring house. A spring house, you've heard of, is usually a little like shed made of stone, built over a spring, where there's water bubbling up from the ground. And what that is for keeping stuff cool in the summer. So that water's coming out of the ground at about 40 degrees, right? And you put some slate around in that little spring house, and you can store your cheese and some meats on that slate. And the water's running up over that slate, keeping it cool at 40 degrees because it's coming out of the ground. Constantly forward, there's that 40 again. It's coming out of the ground. So that's what a spring house is for keeping often dairy and meat. Also, you could go down and get your water too. Although most spring houses today are fed by groundwater and it's not very deep, and you don't know what's upstream. You can't drink that water. When you sink a well today, you go down at least 100 feet. And that's super groundwater, that's way down. That's clean. But groundwater that comes out 20 feet, you don't want to drink that. It's not far enough down. So this is my basement. And I kept that. This is the winter squash, right? Delicata, or winter squash. That one's 2010, that one's 2011. It kept all year and through the summer in the basement. And I kept this one just to spite the squirrel because he started biting into it. And I still kept it for a year, and I ate it. I could still, so as you can see, they start to go off. Some of them start to go, and you eat that one first. But stuff just sitting on a shelf like that, potatoes need to be in the dark because they'll start sprouting. So you keep them in brown paper bags.
Did you say that was a basement?
That's my basement. There's a basement shelf. There's my vinegar. Look, there's some lentils. And that's 2010. 2011 it is now. I got a new harvest, a winter squash. So stuff will keep in the basement as long as it's not 72 or 75. You want to keep it like that. So, cold storage. And of course, rather than store stuff, why don't you grow through the winter? I always grow it through the winter. The winter's not so bad now. It's January, February. These are microgreens. A little bit of potting soil in the bottom of a plastic tray that you're going to throw out anyway. Sprinkle some daikon radish seeds on top. 10 days later, 12 days later, you have a harvest. You can cut them, put it in a sandwich. So you don't need to stop growing for the winter. You can use almost any seeds. Well, I use a daikon because it's kind of a sturdy seed. And here's my garden, winter growing in a hoop house, 10 feet by 12 feet. No heat, no light, no extra light. This is 11/20/21, November, mid-November last year, right? This is the hoop house over here. You can see my barrel. There's a big kale plant. This is the shot inside, the same time. And look what I've got. I've got kale, daikon radish. I don't grow them for the radish, I grow them for the greens. Over here, there's probably some parsley. These are, so we'll go through that. This is November. Then you have the middle of December. This is planted October 1st. I planted the seeds October 1st. By mid-November, you're eating them. These are called cut and come again vegetables. We don't pull them out and bring them into the kitchen. We cut the small, the big leaves off. So you cut and come again. You're going to be eating these till April, right? So here's my stuff. Look, orange chard, Chinese broccoli, Chinese mustard, Chinese cabbage. These Chinese varieties have been grown to do this. You know, there's no extra heat in there. It does freeze in there because they're in plastic, right? But what I'm using is a wicking planter. See this planter? It's a tote from the Home Depot. It's a tote. And there's 4 inches of water in the bottom, and there's 8 inches of soil. And how do I water? there's a pipe. See that pipe there? There's a pipe in every one of these totes. And I water down the pipe. I put 4 inches of water in the base. I take the top of the tote and I cut it to fit down 4 inches from the bottom. And I use some wood or some rocks to hold the base up. And I cut a couple of holes in the base and I put some cloth so the soil drops down into the hole. That means the water's going to wick up. It's going to wick up into these planters. I never have to water the top. 2 years I've been doing this, no aphids, no critters in the hole for the whole winter. So 4 inches of water at the bottom. It's like a desert on top, you see, because there's no water. It goes down the pipe, the water wicks up, and this is, what's this, Swiss chard. Planted late, actually. This was planted 30 days after those. And there it is, 12-12. Just cut the leaves off, bring them in, let's eat. There's 12-12. What's going on? There's January 22nd, so we're going through the winter.
So all these are your planting with seeds?
Yeah, October 1st.
Okay.
October 1st, I plant the hoop house. There's a bulb, bring it in, let's have some lunch. There's all the stuff, there's the kale. There are some onions growing now, January. I put some onion sets in. They're growing slowly through the winter.
And those are the totes
Yeah, those are,
that you had in the previous.
yeah, there's the pipelet where you're watering through there. I take the top of the tote and I cut it to fit 4 inches from the bottom. And I prop it up with rocks, or I use up some wood, like this, 4-inch wood, to hold the bottom up. Make a hole in the new base, so that dirt, with some cloth, so the dirt falls into the water, surrounded by cloth. But that's the wicking part. That allows you to wick the soil up. I wish I put a picture into that, I didn't do that. But that's how, it's very simple, you can check online, people will. This came from Australia. They use it in outdoors in Australia because it's so hot that they don't want to evaporate the water, they want to water on top. So they water underneath to prevent evaporation. I said, I could use that through the winter to stop aphids from growing on, so that it's dry on top. The soil does get moist. But when you start watering in winter, you create habitat, for other creatures. So we're up to March 22nd now. Same place, this is the same picture. Look at how well the onions are doing. I'm eating onions in April, spring onions. There's parsley going there all through the winter. Parsley loves to go through the winter. A Swiss chard loves the winter. These are what we call the cold crops in America, C-O-L-E. They're all brassicate, they're all cancer reducing, they're all super healthy. Even your kids are gonna like one of these. The mustard's hot. I always trick kids with that. Well, I don't trick them, I say, try that one. They go, ah, it's hot. And then, guess what, the next week, when there's new people in the class, they go, come over and taste it. So, this is great stuff. What else did I see? The parsley, onions. There's no purslane growing now. Well, that's the first thing that come up in here. Anyway, that's March. That's it. That's March, and as you see, I'm eating that stuff all winter. So there we are. Well, that's about all I have. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you learned something. And thanks, Jane, for inviting me. Jane, blame Jane for this.
Yeah, folks on the folks on Zoom, if you'd like to ask a question, you can feel free to unmute yourself at this time.
Yeah, if anybody has any questions on Zoom, I think there's only 2 or 3.
Okay.
Anyway.
It's just fascinating. Thank you, Tony. It's just fascinating.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm glad I have enough material to make it interesting.
Any samples? No samples.
There's some-
Do you want to do a YouTube on how you make those?
Yeah.
Yeah, I should do. I haven't done it yet.
Great.
I haven't done it. I think Permaculture magazine's going to print it the next issue. But yeah, I'll do a YouTube. There are people with YouTubes, but I'll do one. Absolutely.
So do you have websites?
Yeah.
What are they?
Well, I have a sustainable19320.org. Sustainable 19320, which is the 19320, which is Coatesville. So that's my sustainable website. A lot of interesting stuff about sustainability. I do have Tony Fix It on YouTube Tony takes it. But make sure it's me, because there's a few other guys who stole mine now. I was first there with Fix It.
What was the first one, Tony?
Sustainable 19320.org. And you can get, actually, if you just remember TonyBuck.com, I have TonyBuck.com. I'm publishing a book in a couple of weeks. So TonyBuck.com, you can get to all my other websites.
Tony, is it Mac?
Yeah.
MACK.com.
Tony Buck.
More.
TonyBuck.com. Oh, my email is TonyBuck1@mac.com. But if you want to go to my website, I'm telling you, I've got 3 websites and a YouTube channel.
That's
Why don't
the
you
name.
just go to TonyBuck.com? You don't remember that. And from there, you can go to all my other stuff. That's the way. TonyBuck.com. And from there, you'll see sustainability. You'll see. I got at least 30 videos up on YouTube. So yeah. Yeah, we've got to start innovating. We've got to figure out things. We can all be growing. There's no seasons now. There's no extra heating here. Now, when it's a really super cold, I forgot to say, when there's a super cold night coming, see, this is row cover. This white stuff is row cover, or remade they call it. I throw it over the plants when it's really cold. But other than that,
Is that up against your house or anything? Or
No,
just-
actually-
Just out there?
yeah, no, I'm tricking a little bit.
Is it one layer of plastic?
It's one layer of plastic, that's all.
Oh, so you double,
You could double it, yeah. And this wall is the north wall. It's actually a foam insulation, 1-inch thick foam insulation. So that's on the north wall because the sun's never at the north. And this is foil, and it shines light back into the thing. I get 25% more light, I think, with that foil shining into the thing. My cucumbers, they'll grow in the garden, and they'll all head toward the garage door wall because it's white, painted white. It's really bright. They're all going to the wall.
Yeah.
So we can do this. We can, whatever situation you can create reflective surfaces which will increase your light and make the plants grow better because it's light is what grows a plant. It can be warm, you need water, but if you don't have light, you don't have photosynthesis, and you don't have growth. Anyway, so there we are. Good. That's my.
Thank you.
Thank
We
you.
got it.
Thank you.